The Stone Age, 1950s to 1960s. Early F1 cars looked like someone attached wheels to a cigar. No wings, engines mounted in front like regular cars, and drivers who needed arms like gorillas just to turn the wheel. The Alfa Romeo 158 dominated the early years, weighing over 1,500 pounds and producing around 350 horsepower from a supercharged straight-8 engine that sounded like a mechanical hurricane. Driving an early F1 car was like trying to control a horse while riding a shopping cart down a mountain. The cars had about as much aerodynamics as a brick, and handling was more suggestion than science. Juan Manuel Fangio mastered these beasts through pure skill, winning 5 championships between 1951 and 1957, by essentially wrestling his car into submission every single lap. The Jack Brabham and the Cooper Car Company had a revolutionary idea in the late 1950s. Instead of placing the engine in front, they put it behind the driver. The Cooper T43 and T51 were the first successful rear-engine F1 cars. And suddenly everything changed. Weight distribution improved dramatically, steering became manageable, and drivers could finally turn corners without needing a gym membership. Enzo Ferrari initially dismissed rear-engine cars as garagistes, basically calling them amateur hour. But when Brabham won back-to-back championships in 1959 and 1960 with his lightweight Cooper Climax, even the stubborn Italians had to admit defeat. By 1961, Ferrari had switched to rear-mounted engines with the 156 Shark Nose. Cars went from front-heavy monsters that pushed wide in every corner to balanced machines that could actually dance through turns. Drivers like Jim Clark could now use finesse instead of brute strength, ushering in a new era of precision driving. The Coventry Climax FPF 4-cylinder engine became the weapon of choice for many teams, producing 240 horsepower from just 2.5 liters. The Wing Revolution, late 1960s to 1970s. In 1968, Peter Wright and Colin Chapman at Team Lotus looked at airplane wings and thought about flipping these upside down. The Lotus 49B appeared at Monaco with small wings mounted on spindly struts, and every team scrambled to grow their own aerodynamic appendages. These early wings were engineered disasters waiting to happen. Teams mounted them directly to the suspension, which was about as smart as tying your parachute to a rubber band. When they failed, and they did spectacularly, cars became impromptu aircraft. Graham Hill's Lotus launched into orbit at Spain's Montjuic Park in 1969, leading to immediate regulations requiring wings to be mounted to the chassis. Gordon Murray at Brabham pioneered the distinctive nose cone design with the BT42, directing airflow around the driver and toward the rear of the car. Airboxes sprouted behind drivers' heads like mechanical mohawks, feeding precious oxygen to thirsty engines. Colin Chapman, the mad scientist of F1, wasn't done causing chaos. His Lotus 78 in 1977 introduced ground effect aerodynamics, using shaped side pods and flexible skirts to create a low-pressure area beneath the car. The Lotus 79 perfected this concept, creating so much suction it could theoretically drive upside down in a tunnel. These ground effect cars stuck to the track like magnets, but handling them was like wrestling a vacuum cleaner that could kill you. Mario Andretti described the Lotus 79 as a beast that wanted to kill you, but if you could tame it, it would make you a god. The downforce was so intense that drivers experienced crushing G-forces and physical exhaustion unlike anything before. Teams pushed ground effect to insane extremes. The Brabham BT46B fan car, designed by Murray, literally used a giant cooling fan to suck the car to the track. It won its only race at Sweden in 1978 before being banned. The Cosworth DFV V8, designed by Keith Duckworth, became the backbone of F1. This 3.0-liter masterpiece powered 155 race wins between 1967 and 1985. Screaming to 10,000 RPM while producing a sound that could wake the dead 3 counties over. Ferrari countered with their own flat 12 engines in cars like the 312T, which Niki Lauda piloted to 2 championships despite an engine that sounded like a chainsaw having an argument with a motorcycle. The Turbo Madness, 1980s. The 1980s were where F1 cars discovered performance-enhancing drugs. Renault introduced turbocharging to F1 in 1977 with their RS01, but it wasn't until the early 80s that turbocharged engines became the dominant force. These weren't subtle modifications, they were controlled explosions on wheels. Claude Galopin and Francois Castaing at Renault developed the first successful turbo engine, the V6 EF1, which initially produced around 500 horsepower. But engineers quickly discovered that if a little boost was good, a lot of boost was better. By 1986, qualifying engines were producing over 1,400 horsepower from just 1.5 liters. The BMW M1213 engine, developed by Paul Rosche, became legendary for its ridiculous power output. In qualifying trim, this four-cylinder monster produced an estimated 1,500 horsepower at 11,000 RPM, running on fuel that was basically rocket juice mixed with hope and prayer. The engine life was measured in minutes, not races. But for those brief moments, it was automotive insanity at its finest. This engine had more lag than your internet connection during a Netflix outage. Drivers would mash the throttle and wait for what felt like an eternity before the turbo spooled up and launched them into the next dimension. Kiki Rosberg described driving the Williams FW09 as like riding an elephant. You never knew when it would decide to throw you off. Honda joined the party with their RA163E V6, which powered McLaren to 4 consecutive Constructors' Championships. Designed by Osamu Goto, this engine was more reliable than its European counterparts, but equally violent when the boost kicked in. Alain Prost learned to drive this beast with surgical precision, earning him the nickname the Professor. The cars themselves became wider and more sophisticated to handle the immense power. Gordon Murray's Brabham BT52 featured innovative carbon fiber construction, making it lighter and stronger than traditional aluminum chassis. The car looked like a fighter jet that had lost its wings. Carbon fiber technology, pioneered by McLaren's John Barnard with the MP4-1 in 1981, revolutionized car construction. These chassis were lighter, stronger, and safer than anything before, though still about as protective as a cardboard box in a demolition derby. Aerodynamics became increasingly complex as teams tried to manage the massive power increases. Adrian Newey, then working at March, began developing his understanding of airflow that would later make him a legend. The Safety Revolution, 1990s. After the devastating weekend at Imola in 1994 that claimed Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger, F1 finally discovered that maybe keeping drivers alive was more important than pure speed. Max Mosley, FIA president, spearheaded massive safety reforms that transformed the sport. The wooden plank requirement was engineered by Charlie Whiting to stop teams from running cars so low they scraped the track like fingernails on a chalkboard. If your plank wore down more than 1 millimeter during a race, you got disqualified. Professor Sid Watkins, F1's chief medical officer, revolutionized safety procedures and medical response. His insistence on proper barriers, medical helicopters at every circuit, and instant communication systems saved countless lives. Drivers called him the Prof with genuine affection, knowing he was the reason many of them went home intact. Electronic systems crept into F1 like teenagers past curfew. Traction control, launch control, and semi-automatic gearboxes arrived to help drivers who apparently couldn't be trusted to operate their own cars anymore. McLaren's Steve Nichols developed some of the most sophisticated electronics packages, turning F1 cars into rolling computers. The Benetton B194, engineered by Ross Brawn, allegedly featured launch control and traction control systems that were technically illegal, but nearly impossible to detect. Michael Schumacher's dominance that year raised suspicions, but the car's electronic systems remained largely secret. V10 engines became the standard, screaming at 18,000 RPM and producing sounds that could wake the dead. Cosworth's HB V10, Ferrari's 046 engine designed by Gilles Simon, and Mercedes' FO110 created a symphony of mechanical violence that fans still talk about today. These engines were hand-built works of art, each one assembled by master craftsmen who treated them like mechanical Stradivarius violins. Honda's RA121E V12 in the McLaren MP4-6 represented the pinnacle of naturally aspirated engine design. Osamu Goto's masterpiece helped Ayrton Senna win his third championship in 1991, producing 700 horsepower from 3.5 liters while maintaining reliability that other manufacturers envied. Adrian Newey joined Williams and immediately began creating aerodynamic masterpieces. His FW14B was so advanced, it featured active suspension designed by Patrick Head, automatically adjusting ride height and handling characteristics in real time. The car was basically a computer on wheels that happened to go 200 miles per hour. The computer age, 2000s. F1 cars became rolling supercomputers with more processing power than the systems that sent humans to the moon. Teams spent millions developing aerodynamics so complex they needed wind tunnels that cost more than most people's houses. The Sauber C20, Ferrari F2004, and McLaren MP420 represented the pinnacle of aerodynamic complexity. Adrian Newey, now at McLaren, created the MP413 and MP414 that were aerodynamic masterpieces. His understanding of airflow was so intuitive that he barely used computers, preferring to sketch designs by hand like some kind of aerodynamic wizard. Meanwhile, Ferrari's Rory Byrne designed the F2002 and F2004, cars so dominant they made racing boring for everyone except Ferrari fans. Double diffusers, blown diffusers, and exhaust-blown wings appeared faster than fashion trends. If it could move air in a beneficial way, someone stuck it on a car. The Braun BGP 009, designed by a team led by Loic Bigois, featured a controversial double diffuser that was technically legal but morally questionable. The car dominated the 2009 season before anyone else figured out what they were doing. Ross Brawn's strategic brilliance at Ferrari created cars that were both fast and reliable. The F2004, powered by the 053 V10 engine, won 15 out of 18 races in 2004. Red Bull Racing emerged as a serious competitor when Adrian Newey joined them in 2006, laying the foundation with increasingly sophisticated aerodynamics and packaging. The cars became so aerodynamically dependent that following another car became like trying to fly a paper airplane in a hurricane. Overtaking turned into an extinct art form, with races becoming processional parades determined by qualifying position and pit stop strategy. Engine development reached incredible heights before being curtailed by regulations. The BMW P84 V10 produced over 950 horsepower at 19,000 RPM, while Ferrari's 056 engine helped Michael Schumacher dominate the early 2000s. These engines were so highly stressed, they needed complete rebuilds after every race weekend. The hybrid era, 2014 to present. In 2014, F1 discovered environmentalism and decided to go hybrid. Mercedes AMG high-performance powertrains, led by Andy Cowell, developed a PU106A hybrid, a 1.6-liter V6 turbocharged engine combined with 2 electric motor generators. These new power units have more acronyms than a government agency: ERSK, Energy Recovery System Kinetic; ERSH, Energy Recovery System Heat; MGUK, Motor Generator Unit Kinetic; and MGUH, Motor Generator Unit Heat. They recover energy from braking and exhaust heat, then deploy it strategically like a video game power-up system. Mercedes absolutely nailed the hybrid regulations from day one. Their split turbo design, with the compressor and turbines separated by the MGUH, was pure engineering genius. While other manufacturers struggled with reliability and efficiency, Mercedes built a power unit that was both fast and bulletproof. Ferrari's 059 hybrid power unit, developed under Mattia Binotto's leadership, eventually became competitive, but took several years to match Mercedes' efficiency. Honda returned to F1 with McLaren in 2015 with their RA615H engine, which was initially so bad that Fernando Alonso famously described it as having the power of a GP2 engine over team radio. Modern F1 cars can pull 6 Gs in corners, stop from 100 miles per hour in less than 50 feet, and accelerate to 60 miles per hour faster than you can say Formula One. They're basically ground-bound fighter jets, operated by athletes with reflexes that would make cats envious. The Mercedes W11, designed by James Allison and his team, won 13 out of 17 races in 2020, setting new standards for dominance. The Halo device arrived in 2018, looking like a flip-flop stuck on the cockpit. This titanium structure, designed by the FIA's safety department, was initially hated by purists who thought it ruined the aesthetic of open cockpit racing. Critics called it ugly, but it saved multiple lives, including Charles Leclerc at Spa in 2018 and Lewis Hamilton at Monza in 2021. Adrian Newey's Red Bull RB19 represents the current pinnacle of F1 design. This car is so dominant, it makes the Ferrari F2004 look competitive. Max Verstappen won 19 out of 22 races in 2023, often by margins that made other drivers look like they were competing in a different series entirely. The ground effect return, 2022 to present. F1 came full circle in 2022, bringing back ground effect aerodynamics but with 21st century engineering and safety standards. The new regulations, developed by Pat Simmons and the FIA technical team, aim to improve racing by reducing dirty air and making overtaking possible again. These modern ground effect cars create massive downforce using carefully sculpted floor designs and venturi tunnels underneath. Unlike the dangerous sliding skirts of the 1970s, modern cars use precise aerodynamic shaping to achieve ground effect without compromising safety. The wheels grew from 13 to 18 inches, making the cars look like they borrowed rims from a luxury sedan. Pirelli developed new tire compounds to work with the larger wheels, while Brembo created larger brake discs to handle the increased speeds and downforce. Red Bull's RB19, designed by Adrian Newey's team, immediately established itself as the benchmark. The car's aerodynamic efficiency is so superior that it can run higher downforce levels than competitors while maintaining straight-line speed advantage. Mercedes struggled initially with their W13, suffering from severe porpoising, a phenomenon where ground effect cars bounce uncontrollably at high speeds. James Allison and his team eventually solved these issues with the W14, but not before losing 2 years of potential championships. Ferrari's F175 and F75 showed flashes of brilliance under the guidance of Enrico Cardile, but reliability issues and strategic mistakes prevented them from challenging Red Bull consistently. The SF23 improved significantly, proving Ferrari's aerodynamic concepts were fundamentally sound. Current F1 cars represent the absolute pinnacle of automotive technology. They feature active aerodynamics, sophisticated hybrid power units, and safety systems that would have been science fiction just decades ago. The Mercedes W15, Ferrari SF24, and Red Bull RB20 are engineering marvels that push the boundaries of what's physically possible. Modern Formula One has evolved from cigar-shaped death traps with no safety features into the most advanced racing machines ever conceived. Each era brought revolutionary changes that seemed impossible just years before. From the first wings that made cars fly, to turbo engines producing power that defied physics, to hybrid systems that recover energy from thin air. The journey from Juan Manuel Fangio, wrestling a front-engine monster around Monaco, to Max Verstappen piloting a computer-controlled rocket ship represents one of the most dramatic technological evolutions in motorsport history. These machines now generate forces that would tear apart the cars of previous generations, while keeping their drivers safer than ever before. They're living proof that the impossible becomes inevitable when brilliant engineers are given the freedom to reimagine what a racing car can be. From 350 horsepower straight eights to 1,000 plus horsepower hybrid systems, from mechanical simplicity to electronic complexity, Formula One has consistently pushed the boundaries of what's physically possible on 4 wheels.